Welcome to Lost Legends of Darkness, where the shadows come alive and the unknown waits just beyond the edge of your screen. If you're new here, consider this your invitation to the dark side. Hit that subscribe button and join us as we unravel tales that will linger in your mind long after the video ends. And for those who've been here before, well, you already know what you're in for. Tonight's story is one you won't forget. So turn off the lights, turn up the volume, and let us begin. The door creaked open, and Clara stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and something else, something metallic like blood. The floorboards groaned beneath her feet, and the walls seemed to lean in closer, as if the house itself was alive and watching her. The letter had said to come before the moon was full, and here she was, standing in the foyer of Blackwood Manor, with no idea what she was walking into. The man Thalia stood in the shadows, his pale face half hidden by the dim light of a single flickering chandelier. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but it carried through the room like a cold wind. "You've been chosen," he said again, his eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "But chosen for what?" Clara asked, her voice trembling. Elias smiled, a slow, unnerving grin that made her stomach twist. "For the game," he replied. "And the rules are simple. Survive the night." Before she could protest, the door slammed shut behind her. The sound echoed through the house, and Clara felt a chill run down her spine. She turned back to Elias, but he was gone, vanished into the shadows as if he had never been there at all. The house was silent now, except for the faint sound of footsteps above her. Slow, deliberate, and getting closer. Clara's heart pounded in her chest as she backed away from the door. She told herself to stay calm, to think, but the air was so cold it burned her lungs, and the shadows seemed to shift and move on their own. She reached for her phone, but the screen was black, unresponsive. The house seemed to swallow all light, all sound, all hope. The footsteps grew louder, and Clara knew she had to move. She turned and ran down the nearest hallway, her boots echoing on the wooden floor. The walls were lined with portraits, their eyes following her as she passed. She didn't stop to look, didn't dare to slow down. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever, twisting and turning in ways that made no sense. She passed the same portrait 3 times, a woman with hollow eyes and a cruel smile, before she realized the house was playing tricks on her. And then she heard it. A whisper, so faint she almost missed it. "Run!" Clara froze, her breath catching in her throat. The voice was close, too close, and it didn't sound human. She turned slowly, her eyes scanning the darkness. The hallway was empty, but the air felt heavier now, as if something was closing in. She took a step back, and the floorboard beneath her creaked loudly. The sound seemed to echo forever, and then silence. The whispers came again, louder this time. "Run. Run. Run." Clara didn't need to be told twice. She turned and ran, her heart pounding in her ears. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever, the walls closing in around her. She could hear the footsteps behind her now, faster, louder, and the whispers grew into a chorus of voices, all urging her to run. She burst into a room and slammed the door behind her, leaning against it as she tried to catch her breath. The room was small, with a single window covered by heavy curtains. A mirror hung on the wall, its surface cracked and fogged with age. Clara's reflection stared back at her, wide-eyed and terrified. And then the reflection smiled. Clara stumbled back, her breath catching in her throat. The reflection didn't move with her, it stayed where it was, its smile growing wider, its eyes darkening until they were completely black. "You've been chosen," it said, its voice echoing in the small room. "But you'll never leave." Clara turned and ran, bursting out of the room and back into the hallway. The house seemed to shift around her, the walls twisting and turning until she didn't know which way was which. She could hear the footsteps behind her, the whispers growing louder, and the air grew colder with every step. She stumbled into another room, this one filled with mirrors. Dozens of them, each one reflecting a different version of herself. One Clara was bleeding from a wound in her side, another was laughing hysterically, and another wasn't human. Its eyes glowed like Elias's, and its smile was too wide, too sharp. You've been chosen, the reflections said in unison, their voices overlapping and twisting together. But you'll never leave. Clara screamed and smashed the nearest mirror, but the reflections didn't disappear. They stepped out of the glass surrounding her, their eyes glowing like embers in the dark. She tried to run, but they were everywhere, their hands reaching for her, their voices echoing in her ears. And then everything went black. When Clara woke up, she was in her apartment. The sun was shining through the windows and the letter was gone. She told herself it was just a dream, a horrible, vivid dream. But that night, as she lay in bed, she heard it again, the sound of footsteps above her. And then the whisper, "You're still in the game." And that's where our story ends, or does it? Because here's the thing, Blackwood Manor is real. It is out there waiting, and you never know when you might be chosen. So, the next time you hear a knock at your door or find a letter waiting for you, ask yourself, are you brave enough to answer? Or will you run? Thank you for joining us tonight on Lost Legends of Darkness. If you enjoyed this tale of terror, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, the shadows are always watching. See you in the next video.